It's a big hello from me. If you don't know me, if you've not been to one of our events before, my name's Joyce Dalgleish, and I work for Scottish Government's Data Division, which is part of our Digital Directorate, if you wanted to know that detail. And I am one of the people that supports this community, and we work in collaboration with the fantastic people at the Data Lab. So not only do you have these events, which you may have signed up for through the newsletter or through LinkedIn, but we also, but there is a community that you can sign up for, which Data Lab colleague Stephen, who's on the call, is going to be able to put a link in. Oh, he's done it already. Lovely. And hello, people there. And now, if you haven't come across the Data Lab public sector community, well, what we've started doing this because there's so much fantastic work goes on in the public sector. I think sometimes people they kind of associate the public sector often and public sector data with a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of admin, perhaps, maybe characterizing it that way, but actually lots of people doing really interesting things. In my own work, I'm working predominantly in business change and transformation and support and accelerator, which we're just about to launch. So there's lots of, we're seeing lots of really interesting innovation all over the place. And I think also sparking ideas about what's possible. So sometimes, in a public sector team, you might be the only data person or the only analyst or and you've got ideas. Is anybody else doing anything like that? Well, this is a chance to hear what other people are thinking about. So because sometimes it's really hard to know. We can often be quite siloed in the way we operate. And why, obviously there's lots of other fab communities on that Data Lab platform, and I would strongly recommend you have a look and get signed up to those. But something here, we're bringing our focus into about public sector projects or projects that use public sector data. So, it's trying to speak to something that is relevant to the folks on the call. So just to say a little word about the community, we're now nearly 2,000 members in the public sector community alone. Not everybody there is from the public sector, but it's people with a shared interest. So that's a place where you could, I post there, but you could also post there. So if you've got events coming up, projects, anything you'd like to share, then please do. Then, you are at liberty to post away there. And now we have to do the housekeeping bit. So quickly now, so this event is being recorded. So it's being recorded up to the, including the presentation. Beyond that, sometimes if there's no cameras on, then we'll record the chat, but we'll just play that by ear. There will be a recording, and that will be on the Data Labs YouTube channel. The speakers will share with me a copy of the slides, which will save up as a PDF in the community, and it'll also be circulated to people who have signed up. What we'll do is there'll be the presentation bit of this, and then we'll move on to Q&A, and the team will, between us, we will either read these out or we'll get you on camera. It depends how it goes. We'll see how it is, but we'll follow up as many as we can. And if there's anything that we don't get to, you're very welcome to share your email or message me an email, and I can pass on. Now, you don't need to hear me anymore because I want to hand over to our speakers. So this is a topic that you're here for, just to make sure you're all in the right place. And I'm going to hand over to Anthony and Matt from Box, who are going to talk on this subject. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they're going to do a far better job than I am. So over to you. I don't know who's speaking first, Anthony, Matt, but go for it. And I will stop. They will take over the slides.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joyce. Just to confirm, you're seeing the slides from my side?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
so
fantastic. Sorry, I needed the audible recognition. I couldn't see the chat actually on a second screen here. So thank you, and thank you also for inviting us to be part of today's webinar. Really appreciated that introduction into the Data Lab community in recent months. We're here today under the theme of cybersecurity and privacy, and obviously speaking around the topic of guardrails and governance for secure AI exploration and automation. So my name is Anthony Pryor. I'm an account executive sitting in the Box public sector team. I'll provide a bit more of an introduction shortly to Box and why we've got, I guess, a point of view in this area and how we help organisations. And I'm joined by Matt Evans from our Box Consulting team, and Matt will introduce Box Consulting a bit later on. But the conversations that we're having with organisations at the moment, and I guess they're probably themes that you see within this community, within this group of people and the organisations you represent, is it's a really exciting time. A time of great sort of technology advancement and maybe new ways of working that are going to be introduced, but also a time of caution and concern about risk. So purpose for us today really is, I'll give you a bit of an overview of Box just to set the context, but really to share some thoughts with you and best practices around how to navigate that. As Joyce mentioned, and I think in the guidance notes there, we're looking for this to be an interactive session where possible. So feel free to use the chat. Appreciate any assistance from Joyce and co to alert us to questions that come in. But if people do want to come off mute, if they do want to be a more active part of the session, then we're more than willing for that to be the case. So just a bit about Box. We're a 21 plus years, I think, of providing content management to customers. As you see there, we've got 120,000 customers, so 10,000 public bodies globally, and I sit within that public sector team. But really, when we talk about content amongst this group of organisations, it could be high-res videos and animation files for a movie studio. It could be clinical trials information for a pharmaceutical client. It could be loan documents for a financial services institution. For me in public sector, an example is actually police forces. So I work with police forces. So an example is the Police Service of Northern Ireland, who use Box to take digital evidence in from victims of crime, from members of the public, and then to securely store that, share that confidently with other police forces and other parts of the justice system to drive better outcomes. How we do that, so Box is a SaaS platform. So for UK public sector customers, that is stored, the content is all stored within the UK. We've just been named leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for document management. A lot of that comes from our ease of use. So the reason that police officers, other customers are able to easily use Box is that there's a very secure platform, but a very easy interface that they're able to interact with. And the Box platform is one that we've introduced and continue to introduce innovation into as well. So that might come in the form of being able to work with other parts of a customer's technology stack. So if they're working with things like Salesforce and ServiceNow, how can their content that they work in day out support that better way of working? And of course, a big part of today's subject is around AI. And we've seen, obviously, that introduce much change and curiosity from organizations. So Box allows customers to bring their own LLM into their ways of working, to use the secure content stored within Box to generate automation, generate insights. But also we have that capability that sits within the platform as well. So we deliver content in a really secure way, where there's a full audit trail, you can imagine, with digital evidence, where only the right people access the right piece of content, the right document that they need to. And again, that focus today is on the security and the privacy side of things. So within the Box platform, we have a permissions aware way of people storing content and accessing content. So you should only see the version of the document, the version of the content that's been shared with you. And there's capability within the platform as well to actually understand when there's ransomware and malware attacks and to prevent against those, and to ensure that your content remains secure at all times. But a big part of today's focus is really around AI and the opportunities that organizations are seeing. And we're seeing content and documents and the things that people work with as the area that people are looking at for their exploratory steps. So it might be the minutes from a meeting, it might be a raft of research documentation that a university has, and being able to bring that together and draw insights is where we're seeing conversations go, but actually more so into how that can support processes and broader processes that they're undertaking. And just as I sort of head towards the box consulting section, which is how we experience customers or how we support customers who are navigating that new world and those future ways of working. This is an area of real challenge when it comes to their content, because typically that is stored all over the place. It's different teams, different parts of the organization, different departments that they in turn work with. And that can bring a real challenge in terms of the consistent way that is stored, the consistent way that is accessed. And that opens up areas of difficulty when you look to then bring in AI and bring in automation and efficiencies. And a big part of that as well is that a focus on AI can be around structured data, things that we might have in databases, in CRM systems and other tools that we work with. But the reality is that the way we do our work is within PDFs, Word, Excel, videos, images, lots of different file types. And within that, typically we'll find an organization has 90% of their enterprise data in an unstructured format. So being able to effectively use that as part of those new ways of working is a real challenge, and that's a big area of Box's focus and expertise. So at this point in time, very conscious of giving you too much of a Box platform overview, because very much not the aim for today. But I would like to introduce you over to Matt Evans, sitting within our Box consulting team to talk around how we support customers on that journey.
Afternoon. Thank you, Anthony. Quick intro to myself in a little bit more detail. I'm a solutions consultant in our Box consulting practice. So that's our professional services arm of the organization that Anthony's just walked through. We have 3 core disciplines that we work with, and within those there are different strands of work streams and activities that we support. So we have our functional expertise across implementation, our technical teams, so they consist of supporting with migrations, standing up single sign-on, standing up other standard or custom integrations with Box. And then last, certainly not least, our adoption practice. So all things change management and enablement around that, which is particularly prevalent given the nature of the conversation that we're having today. I've been at Box myself for about 6.5 years, and that entire time has been within consulting, supporting organizations either coming onto Box from brand new, or they've been on Box for a period of time and are looking to deploy new use cases, expand adoption across the organization. And I think 5-6 years ago, conversations may have been moving away from on-prem across to SaaS, wanting to store files in the cloud, sync, externally collaborate. And that's definitely moved through more towards the conversations we're seeing now, where content is already in Box, already in other systems, and we now want to tap into and enrich that data, speed up productivity, address cost savings, and so on. And those are conversations we're supporting today. And I think the next section is really Anthony and myself walking through topics and themes we're seeing and how we're supporting organizations thinking around it as they move through the journey of deploying AI.
Thanks, Matt. And I think into this next section and why we see content really mattering in terms of AI exploration, I kind of have a real life example fairly recently, going through a workshop experience with an existing customer, and probably the most senior person who was due to be in that meeting was about 25 minutes late. And it emerged that the reason that they were late for that meeting is that they required a new laptop, and they just started to use Copilot as part of their early AI exploration. And actually, they'd been sent on the wrong path. They'd accessed an old version of the IT policy and the policy for a new laptop, and it led to them being late for the meeting. And it was a fairly safe example of how someone was looking to draw some efficiencies from new ways of working, but actually they'd been armed with incorrect information that had a detrimental effect. Obviously, we see perhaps more public examples of where things can go wrong. So just into this section, Matt, and the expertise that we see within Box Consulting, I think we've got 3 typical issues that we see here and just highlighting their importance when it comes to those new ways of working with AI and automation.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily an exhaustive list, and there are certainly other considerations we come across and talk to customers about. These are potentially three of the most common ones we see across both private and public organizations, and depending on where they are in their AI journey. So whether at the very beginning, looking at various LLM providers that they're rolling out, or they're a bit further along down that spectrum of deploying AI. They've rolled out some tools, perhaps with some levels of change and enablement around that. But these are kind of common trends that we have seen and worked with organizations to support when they're considering around Inbox in particular, but I also think it applies regardless of what your source system or set of systems may be when you're deploying AI onto that platform, whether it be Box or something else. So number one, definitely seen use cases or situations rather for specific use cases where agents have been deployed either across an enterprise or narrowed down to specific structures where results are being provided based on content that is now outdated, obsolete. It's a previous version that is no longer the latest copy of a file, and you're essentially providing or receiving bad responses or bad outputs to end users that have asked questions based on that specific file itself or a set of files, however that is provided, where there can be 3 or 4 different ways they're interrogating 10 files, 100 files, or into the thousands of files. So when we speak to organizations here, that's really where they're thinking around how are they appropriately archiving their content and thinking around perhaps disposition policies where content is either archived or treated in another manner after X period of time, where they're defining X, or if content has been inactive where nobody has gone looking at it for, again, a period of time that customers define, so that the results from those files that are not always wrong, but perhaps not providing the latest information. If a PowerPoint presentation has been updated since, or there's now another separate version of a file elsewhere, that those are not getting picked up as part of those results. And kind of alongside that, as part of thinking around archiving and disposition and appropriate retention schedules and management of content, is where there's been content bloat, if you like, across structures, across departments. So perhaps what started as hundreds or low thousands of files has now moved into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of files. There are structures, areas within the organization and enterprise systems where there's just a huge amount of data for an AI agent potentially to go traversing through, where context windows quickly get exhausted as you burn through token limits and token allowance, and you're perhaps not getting the full complete picture of an answer as you expect to because of the amount of content that you've sent it herring across. And then the last one, potentially the most important of these three, is access to content. Now, perhaps 5-10 years ago, organizations may have thought around providing just access to more content that was needed, with more element of trust, that people are only really looking around and finding the content that they need to, that's associated with their department. Or perhaps people have been given editor access to files and folders where perhaps they actually needed viewer access, or from an agent perspective now, write access instead of read access. So again, here, potential risks and downstream impacts is a AI agent having access based on a user perhaps that's gone off asking questions, where it's returning information based on files that is perhaps internal to a company when they're building a use case that is actually for sharing something external with a vendor, partner, supplier as part of their department or use case. So that's 3 common trends we've seen where we've supported organizations where how they can think around becoming more AI ready when they're deploying it across Box, but I think said also applying across whatever platform that may be used as a document management system. And I think if we turn to the next page, these are, again, not an exhaustive list of scenarios or methods of becoming AI ready that we've worked towards, but again, some of the common ones we're seeing. So when we're thinking around AI agents potentially having access to content that it should not do, that's where you're thinking around cleaning up collaborations or cleaning up links that are pointed towards particular files. So here, that can be running through reporting to identify files that are duplicates based on hash values, or files that just haven't been touched by anyone across 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, depending on what the organization's preference is towards defining inactivity. And there, that might be restructuring that content as needed. So identifying those inactive files and moving them off to a archive, which can be done at scale, utilizing some of the tools and utilizing Box API capabilities as well. Another key one here as well that I do want to touch upon and kind of references Joyce's role somewhat per the introduction as well, is adoption drives and thinking around change management. Definitely seen scenarios where perhaps when companies are on that first wave or first journey of deploying AI, where Copilot or ChatGPT or whichever tool of choice is just deployed and made available to people without much training or communication or enablement around that. So when it comes to Box and utilizing Box AI, there are 4, 5, 6 different areas that you could be utilizing AI, and we'd be providing recommendations depending on the use case and scenario that you have, that one option or one mode of entry is better than another mode of entry. So giving guidance around how to use the tool, considerations around prompting and best guidance as well, and where people are looking to build their own customized agents with own customized instructions. Perhaps I'm looking through finance documents in particular, and I want to focus on 3 or 4 key elements of building that use case, that building out prompts appropriately for handling such scenarios. So really thinking around the change management adoption. And then with that, of course, comes enablement, whether those are live trainings in person, delivered virtually, providing documentation in the form of simple help cards, user guides, and also utilizing capabilities where we deploy something we have as Box Hubs, where you could surface all that content in there and people could actually go in and use AI to ask simple questions around how they can do stuff, kind of basic how-to questions that you might previously have raised tickets to IT service desk or gone looking around 3 or 4 different sources across an external website that contains all the documentation. Other examples in here as well, alongside collaboration cleanup, permissions right sizing, so that we're only providing the appropriate level of access alongside providing the access itself. So if you have access to certain folders, just thinking around whether there should be read access or view access versus write or edit access. And again, as from our perspective, that's something we work with customers as well, providing a whole series of reports with who has access to what, when it was provided, who it's provided by, and just cleaning that up appropriately when you're thinking around deploying agents across the organization.
And Matt, I guess engaging with customers, are you seeing a real mix of those that don't necessarily have a defined AI strategy at the moment and just finding their way, and then others that are a bit more mature and have selected a particular model and started to build the governance and guardrails around that?
Yeah, definitely all ends of that curve, if you like. Still speaking to organizations today that definitely have interest and want to be deploying and thinking around AI within their organization, both across public and private sector, but are at very early stages, haven't necessarily deployed anything enterprise wide, but have been thinking around it, through to organizations at the very extreme of that, where they're very sophisticated, have deployed agents across the organization. Perhaps there's enterprise licensing provided for a certain provider, and then organizations that fit somewhere between those two extreme ends of the spectrum that they've dipped their toes in. Perhaps there's enterprise licensing. They've been thinking around 2 or 3 key use cases, and something we commonly see as well is perhaps 1 or 2 lines of business or departments are identified first as kind of a pilot or a proof of concept phase, that there's a particular use case with success metrics defined, and they want to start testing with that particular use case. And once there's value proven or savings realized there, that they then think around, how do we scale this from 1 or 2 departments through to the rest of the organization, whether that's moving from 50 people at the beginning through to 1,000 or beyond. So the answer in simple terms is we see all sorts of organizations to this day that are across that curve.
Thank you. I can see from, I think when I first met Joyce, it was at Digital Scotland, and the digital strategy latest version had just been published, and I know within Scotland the AI strategy being introduced earlier this year as well. It seems to err on the side of kind of caution and trust, which obviously themes that we see here. There's one slide to close from your side, Matt, which is essentially kind of 3 takeaway areas to help steer people in the right direction and things that they should be thinking about.
Yeah, so there's similarities here with what I was kind of opening with kind of some of the key risks or issues that we see with deploying AI across the organization or across a specific identified department or set of departments. So when we talk to customers, regardless of where they are on that curve and that journey, to an earlier question that you asked, Anthony, these are kind of the 3 key takeaways that we also mention. So discoverability. So when you're thinking around folder names, file names, additional metadata as well. So we know now that people want to go looking for information based on PowerPoint presentations they created 2 years ago. So is there metadata attached and tagged to those files, which kind of move some of that unstructured data through to becoming a bit more structured with additional information that AI agents or a human can later find that file 2 years later after it was originally created. So is it easy for an AI agent to find a file that you're looking for, or a set of files in particular? So can it reliably locate that content? Digestibility. So this kind of moves through left to right, but once a file is identified, or a set of files are identified, how complex or straightforward is that file? Is there text layers? Is there a number of different visuals across that file? Is there a need for OCR that's been done on that file? And also kind of how large of a spectrum of content that you've got. So can an AI agent or a set of agents reliably utilize the files or set of files you've got to find the correct answers within context windows they may be? And then when we go back to the security angle, the downstream impact. So is AI agent or an AI agent finding information that it shouldn't do based on files that are internal or highly confidential that it shouldn't really have access to? And that may lead to thinking around reviewing classification frameworks and schemas. So, for example, we've recently moved towards announcing classifications which can restrict particular AI models. So if you wanted to restrict some or all of those for particular classified files in Box, then that would be something that you'd consider as part of this pillar that we'd certainly be looking to work with organizations to support. So this is definitely a kind of a key takeaway slide that we talk to all organizations about. And if anything, from the last 15 minutes that I've been talking, probably the one slide that I would encourage you to take a look at and leave with you.
Thanks very much, Matt. I'll come away from the share at the moment. We just have a last slide with contact details, but just conscious of any questions that may be asked or be waiting.
Yeah. Anthony and Matt, thank you so much. I think Malcolm has asked a question, Malcolm Price, and I think he's probably, maybe we're cyclically linked, because he said, you mentioned, because it was a striking figure that you had around about that 90% unstructured data to 10% structured. And Malcolm's saying is, does that bring us back to the flow that data maturity needs to precede AI maturity? So yeah, I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's probably a good question to point to Matt and some real life experience with customers in terms of the health of data that you encounter and that you support and look to strengthen.
I think in an ideal world for me, as a Box Consulting representative, I would lean towards saying yes, that you'd want to have a cleaned up structure. So whether that is the smart archive of content, that you're isolating files that are historically old, there's a solid retention policy in place, you have classification and security policies in place that restrict content to certain people and to the use of AI. The reality is, I think, is that the two, in some cases, kind of go alongside each other when we're working with organizations, that they know there's a pressure to perhaps think around deploying AI sooner rather than later. And alongside that work stream, there is levels of data maturity that's going on. So I think yes would be my simple answer, but we do work with orgs that are kind of looking at doing them in parallel or various stages of parallel. I think it goes nicely as well when you're thinking around a phased rollout, beginning with proof of concepts or pilots, that perhaps for that department it's a good solid set of metrics that you could gather where the levels of data maturity and cleanup that may need to be done before you're rolling out to the rest of the organization.
That's great, Matt. I mean, I should say, I mean, and some people on this call will know this already, but in the Scottish Government, we support a data maturity programme for the public sector in Scotland, and it's just about to start its latest cohort. So we're now, if you include the people that are just starting, we're now onto, I think, 60th or 60 organisations that have gone through that, where they do a baseline assessment and of their data maturity, and then sort of work up towards a data strategy. Yes, there you go. Madeline has very kindly shared the data maturity framework, and that's from Data Orchard, and this is exactly the one. Thank you for sharing that. Is the one that we work with. So everybody that goes to the data maturity program has this assessment, and so I definitely think, because I was going to, you've kind of preempted my question, which is if you'd had you had a magic data wand and organizations were coming, we're thinking about this, like, where should they start? I mean, even I'm thinking about, like information stored on my own local drive, a bit of a mess there. But anyway, so I'm going to go back up to Lucy, because Lucy is asking a question. I think interesting is that what level of competency do you generally see with regards to AI, and what tools other than Copilot are staff using in the organizations, if any? Now, some organizations are limiting it, and I speak for one, where we're kind of restricted to Copilot, and also how organizations are using AI agents in the work. So I guess is who in the public sector do you see, and maybe wider private sector too, what AI tools are using, and really how they're using agents. So two different questions there from Lucy.
I can perhaps start, and maybe Anthony's got more to add. Level of competency definitely differs across every organization, I think, as it naturally would for any system or set of tools that are being used. I think across different orgs, in addition to Copilot is definitely high up there in terms of being rolled out. We've seen other organizations look to enterprise with ChatGPT or Claude, seeing those as kind of common ones as well. Definitely also seen others though, like Gemini. I think one of the benefits we see with Box is that you could plug in any of those model providers into an agent that you may design with Box. In terms of how they're being used, I feel like perhaps 2 or 3 years ago it was, let's say, drafting me emails towards this, or can you review these documents? And now it's moving towards, and when Anthony was talking around unstructured data, it's kind of extracting value from all of those files that have been built over time. So whether those are contract documents that you've got lying around across systems, could be Box, could be SharePoint, could be somewhere else, how you're identifying all of the information around that. So picking out dates, picking out number figures in terms of contract value, for example, who signed it, when it was signed, and having that information readily available that a human or an agent could go back and search for that information. So that's an example of kind of a contract lifecycle management use case where you could then tap into additional information or additional downstream use cases and work streams, which is once I've identified the dates, perhaps I now want to be notified once that contract is up for renewal, rather than trying to manually remember or scroll back through my emails from 2 years ago to see when that contract was signed, for those files that are stored in whichever system. So we're seeing use cases like that now, where once you've extracted the information out of the unstructured files, how that's then feeding appropriate downstream processes. I don't know if Anthony, if you've got anything else to add on that one.
I guess there's a couple of things for me, really. One is, I know there's a big focus in Scotland on digital inclusion, and the opportunity with AI is that actually it can bridge the gap. If you know, in your own language, in your own words, you can interact with technology and get outcomes without being an expert. But part of that AI interaction has to come from having the governance, the guardrails, the policy to make sure that's done in a safe and secure way. In terms of using other models, where we've seen a real push for this actually is within the higher education space. So work with universities as well. And really interestingly, we're hearing from universities that students are actually looking at AI competence, AI policy in making their selection for the university that they go to. So it's really interesting to see that shift. There's also an expectation probably in the future that where probably many of us, definitely me included, in the past would be applying for a job and would expect to see Microsoft Office proficiency as a core requirement. Actually, that could be AI, LLM proficiency in the future. So we are working with universities in particular who want to have a more nimble AI ecosystem, where having, you know, the interest for them is having Box as the knowledge base, the content platform that fuels a nimble approach to using different models, which we can support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've got. I want to just read out Malcolm's point here, because he's pondering, because when you're talking about that, you know, how it's effective in finding material from 2 years ago, and you know, is that pondering on whether ethics questions are coming in here too. Rediscovering old data sometimes flags things that we need to review from an ethics perspective as the world moves on. So I think, Malcolm, that's a helpful observation for everybody here. I don't know if you've got any quick thoughts on that one. You might not, it's just maybe more of an observation. But I have a more practical question from Bivana, which is, how are the guardrails placed? Is that through prompting alone?
I can answer. It will be from a Box perspective, but I would think it may largely apply depending on what tools you're using today. So in Box, at the highest level, AI can be totally blocked, it can be totally opened, or across the different capabilities and product suites that you can use it. You can allow it for certain select users or certain groups that you've created, or enable it for everyone except for these groups and individuals. So that is a very useful one to start off with if an organization is thinking around, let's roll out AI across these products, but we want to do it for these 2 lines of business first. So you may only allow it for these groups of people, and for everyone else it's restricted. So that may straight up, for 80% of the enterprise or for the organization, stops them being able to use AI full stop within Box. Then moving beyond that, once you've allowed AI for either the entire organization or certain groups of individuals, then you may go through to building your own custom agents. And you could say again that for this specific agent that focuses on contract lifecycle management, I only want to allow it for these individuals, these groups. So again, AI is fully allowed and managed, but then a specific agent that's been created goes through the same process of, is it available for everyone, or is it only available for select individuals? And then I mentioned this around classification. We're then thinking around for files that are classified, and you can define your own classification structure and framework inbox. So you might say everything classified as confidential or sensitive. We will block agent access for all or some of these providers, so that for specific files, you're further restricting the usage as well. So you essentially have enterprise level controls, agent level controls, and then specific content controls as well. And then the other key thing I think Anthony mentioned as well is for a person who's using one of those agents, for Box specifically, it's never going to return a result based on a file that you do not have access to in Box. It's only ever going to return results based on files that you have access to. So that goes back to a point that I was talking about earlier, where appropriate levels of access for individuals, and with that, the access that comes with agents as well. So that's another key point as well. So hopefully that just helps how we're thinking around Guardrails specifically within Box.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that kind of multi-layered approach, for a complicated organization, and the idea of, because obviously large organizations or small organizations of complexity, and I was thinking, I appreciate the nod to kind of change management, because I'm seeing that come up quite a lot, where we have teams. I'm thinking some work we're doing just now, or where there's great enthusiasm from a certain group of people for a certain AI capability, but they are having to, but the rest of the team or under who will be the sort of users not so enthusiastic. So what do you find works best in terms of the missionary work of converting people's minds about this? What do you think is the sort of thing that makes the penny drop for people? Because people here are probably all the ones that, and I'm sure there's a lot of enthusiasts on the call here, who are the ones that are maybe having to have those conversations.
Yeah, I'm not a change management expert, but I do work with them most days. I think there is kind of core principles and line of questioning that I would do for anyone who's hesitant to use it, which is kind of identifying pain points and challenges they've got today. So are there things that you do daily or weekly on a repeatable process that you think time consuming, are way too manual, and you feel like there's an opportunity here for that to be wholly or partially addressed by utilizing AI capabilities? Are there time savings you think that can be done? Is there money that you think is being wasted doing certain activities that, again, you think can be addressed? So it's kind of for your individual role, or with this specific department, whether it's perhaps easier with a small department for that team of 6 or team of 10, are there things that you're doing continuously and working with perhaps other departments within the organization as well that you think could be sped up, could be addressed, could increase productivity? And that saving of half an hour a day or 2 hours a week could then be used and put towards doing other things that are more meaningful and impactful for your role or for your department. So really looking to sit down and map out with an individual who's hesitant, or a set of teams that are hesitant. We do find in most cases that there will be some scenarios where people are doing things that they think could be improved. That's personally how I'd tackle it, but I'm sure our change experts would have other ideas as well on top of that.
Well, I think it's a really good idea, a good takeaway. We're going to kind of wrap up shortly, but I think it's a really good takeaway that when we are trying to convince people of doing something, that trying to find the what's in it for them question, extracting that, and showing how your idea can meet that need, and is very powerful. So I see Lucy had asked a further question about compliance and governance. But I think it's just because we're getting close to time, and I want to, as I said, I want to respect everybody's time and commitment to be here today. So Lucy, you'll see that Anthony's just posted in the chat and a link to where you can find out some more, but if there's anything else, you can get in touch. Anthony's just putting up the content there, some additional content there about content with emails on it. He's also very kindly shown the AI register. So the AI register is something that is managed by Scottish Government, and that's where we would where we ask, when people are working on AI projects, to put them on that register, to have transparency about what projects are going on. And Anthony, Matt, are you okay? Are you happy for your slides to be shared? I kind of said that at the start, but because I was assuming that was the case, but I hope it is.
No, that's absolutely fine. Everything there is shareable, so no problems at all.
Magic, that's great. And I am just trying to I'm going to just have as in my closing minutes, take the opportunity to do a little bit of promo for the next event before, but I just need to scroll along to that. So for that presentation, thank you so much to Anthony and Matt for coming along and doing that and sharing. And yes, Stephen, I don't know, you would comment on when the recording will be available in the next few days, I would think, Alexander, but Stephen can correct me. We have another event on Tuesday, the 18th of August, which is about well, in Edinburgh, where I am, and where it's festival month, it's the International Festival Fringe, and so therefore lots of people who work in creative industries are in town, and we have many extra hundreds of thousands of people in the city. So we're going to have a talk that is devoted to the creative industries, and we're just going to talk about the earnings of creative graduates, and with a socio-economic slant on it. It's interesting stuff, and so really that page for you to sign up is available right now, so you can sign up. Sadly, I won't be there for it, but my colleague Shona will be in the sort of hostessing role next time. So thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Data Lab for hosting, and thank you to you all for coming. And if you've got any questions, then do get in touch. But thank you. I'll let you get on with your days.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.